Hi there, you're listening to the Trading Through Coronavirus podcast from Business West with me, Nigel Barker. Now, we've been talking over the last couple of weeks about the impact naturally on businesses in our region, but one area of business we've not really talked about much is the farming industry. And I'm joined down the line now by William Frazer from the National Farmers Union. William, you've just launched the COVID-19 Business Impact Service. Can you just explain a little bit about what that is?
This is a service we launched the other week, really, which is all about driving intelligence about the impacts on farms and food businesses across the food chain, really, straight into DEFRA and into government. So we've been working in government for the last few weeks, dealing with their emergency response to this crisis, sitting around the table on pretty much a daily basis in the emergency food resilience group. And so one of the things we need to do is start getting real life evidence, business impacts. This all helps us get that intelligence straight into government as quick as possible, so they've got the best available information on what life is like on the ground for real life moving businesses. So that's what it's all about. It's an online form and portal available on NFU online, and any business, whether you're involved with the NFU or not, can go on there and submit what life looks like for them.
So just on this subject of the impact it's having, what effect is COVID having on, say, for example, our food supply chains, something very close to farming's heart?
Yeah, so this is, it's a big issue that we've seen over the last couple of weeks. Obviously, food has been not far away from the headlines pretty much on a daily basis for the last few weeks. Obviously, had huge amounts of disruption in the supply chain, with lots of people panic buying, going to the shops, feeling a bit nervous about what lies ahead. We've seen that calm down a fair amount, but what we've seen in the wake of it is obviously the shutdown of our food service and hospitality sector, and whether that's cafes, coffee shops, restaurants, that sort of thing, and a lot of our smaller regional processors and businesses supplied into those, and basically that market's disappeared overnight. So we first saw that bite last week with the collapse of the lamb trade, with prices dropping by about £30 a head in some markets, and that was due to basically a lot of that lamb went over to Europe, into the hospitality sector there. That sector shut down pretty much the same time as ours, and so the price just completely bottomed out overnight. What we're seeing this week is that's happening in our local dairy processors. So there's lots of farms, particularly across Gloucestershire and Wiltshire, which supply into a number of small regional dairy processors, and they're under huge pressure because some of them lost 40%, 60% of their market overnight. Huge cash flow problem, and we've got a pressure on the farming system because most of those dairy farms are coming into peak production now, spring flush, with a lot of grass growth and a lot of milk coming through the system, and a lot of that milk doesn't have a home at the moment. So, and because it's such a perishable product, it can't be stored. It needs to find a new home very quickly, and unfortunately we're starting to see farmers dumping that milk.
Obviously we can't kickstart the food service sector because we're in a situation of lockdown, but what can we do to maybe prevent some of that milk from going down the drain?
I think there's a couple of things really. One of the big things we've got to promote to our retailers and to our consumers the importance of buying British and buying local and supporting your local businesses and food firms and farmers, so that we can make sure what demand is there is buying British produce where it's available to avoid that being dumped. And asking retailers not to be sourcing stuff from abroad. We've seen examples of major retailers bringing in product from overseas, beef and poultry in particular, in the last few weeks, and what we need is those retailers to be backing local businesses and local farmers and buying direct from that. So we do. There's a really complicated job to replumb that food supply chain. We've thrived as a society on a sort of just-in-time supply chain for many years now, and it's hard to re-engineer that overnight. We desperately need government support and intervention on it, to certainly inject some solvency into those smaller regional processors, and to make sure we've got really good consumer support, buying local, buying British produce at this time.
And we're sort of in prime growing season for a lot of farmers, and crops will start to come to fruition soon. Keep hearing stories about actually crops dying in the fields. How's the industry going to prevent that from happening?
So one of the big issues we've got coming up around the corner is basically the farm labour force that we need to go and pick and harvest our crops, which peak season is coming up in sort of May, June time. We've got a fair amount of crop to be picked coming up around now. We know asparagus crop is just around the corner, probably Easter weekend. Next week we'll see it fully coming online into production. But the peak labour force time and where we need most help will be once we're into May and June. So typically every year we need about 80,000 people. Typically they come in from abroad, from Eastern Europe, to help complete that job and complete that harvest. And to avoid crops rotting in the ground. So that is what those horticulture businesses, vegetable producers and packers have been relying on for some time. And what we need to do is find a new labour force to help harvest those crops. So that's why we're looking to reach out to those people potentially being furloughed or lost their jobs, or those students, which may not be at university, to maybe consider coming and working on those farms. It's a seasonal job over the summer. Can earn some extra cash. It's well paid. I mean, it is hard work, and there will be a fair amount of training and skilling up to do to get in there. But it's something we're working with government on a daily basis to get a centralised portal and campaign up and running, loosely called sort of Pick for Britain at the moment. And that way, anyone who's interested will be able to go to that portal, find out what are the opportunities on farms in their area, and hopefully make a case for them coming to work there.
Now, I'm lucky enough. I live 100 yards away from rolling fields, and myself and my family are regular walkers in the country, and we're taking our 1 hour of allotted exercise time and to walk the dog and walk our normal routes. But we've definitely seen an increase in the number of people using those footpaths. Some footpaths we walk, never see anybody, and we're seeing upwards of 10, 15 people. What impact is that having on the farming community?
Well, for the last week or so, we've seen unprecedented numbers of people in the countryside, and we're very lucky. We live in a society and a world, particularly in England, where we have a network of rights of way and footpaths which crisscross the countryside, farms, farmyards all over the place. And quite often these footpaths will run through people's gardens, down the side of people's farm buildings, through people's yards. And so with potential health risk attached to this virus, they're very, very nervous about these people potentially passing that virus on to them through contact with stiles and gates and that sort of thing. So there's a big degree of anxiety amongst our membership at the moment on this. However, we don't want to see the countryside shut down. We want it to be open access, but we just need people to be sensible and to be adhering to government guidelines, not travelling far away from their homes to go to new places, and particularly sticking to the countryside code. There's too many stories at the moment from our members of people finding big groups of people walking across their fields through livestock. There's an example just now of someone with 2 dogs off the lead chasing their milking cows around the field. So we're just asking people to be sensible, particularly over the Easter weekend. Please be aware of it's a working environment that you're passing through. Keep your dogs on leads and adhere to the government guidance on public health and social distancing.
Okay. So this weekend, if you're out and about, do stick to the country code. You're only supposed to be going out for exercise. It's in very, very small groups. Immediate families, don't meet up with people, don't go for picnics with people. And just to be aware that the countryside, whilst it's, absolutely lovely, it is a place of business, and people rely on this for their livelihoods and also their lives. So do be considerate. Thank you very much indeed for joining us today, William. I'm going to be catching up with you next week about another initiative I know you've got going on as well. We'll speak about that then. You've been listening to the Trading Through Coronavirus podcast from Business West. Don't forget to follow us, www.tradingthroughcoronavirus.co.uk, or follow the hashtag Trading Through Coronavirus. See you soon.